The border between Mexico and the United States. For as long as it has existed, it has drawn people to it and across it. Families have made lives on both sides, but the border has also divided people. For many, it means conflict, collision, danger. Now both countries face a new idea, a wall end to end on the southern border. The USA Today network traveled every mile of the international line to examine what would a wall do, what would a wall stop, what would it take to build a wall. Explore that journey for yourself by starting here. In some ways, borders are made to be crossed. That's the story every day at the US-Mexico border. There's always a reason to try to cross the border, and always something that stands in the way. In Big Bend National Park, some stretches of the border are marked by 1,000-foot cliffs, taller than any wall could be built. In Big Bend National Park, the Rio Grande passes through some of the most spectacular parts of the border. Reporters Dennis Wagner and Laura Gomez saw it up close.
You start getting into mountains as you get into Big Bend, and the scenery is just absolutely spectacular. I can remember flying into the Boquillas Canyon area, and we were so mesmerized and so awestruck that the helicopter, except for the beat of the rotor blades in the wind, the helicopter went silent inside.
When you're hiking and you are kind of coming down to the base of the river, you see these towering walls of rock. There's a national park on the U.S. side. There's also a national park on the Mexican side. So it's a very desolate area. It's not easy to get to.
There is a checkpoint that is actually operated, that the National Park Service is a cooperative agreement with the Border Patrol. So the Border Patrol doesn't really patrol the park that much, but the Park Service's primary responsibility, and it's actually a Park Service employee who handles the checkpoint there.
And he said, if somebody makes it into the U.S. side from Mexico, they have to walk another 70 miles to get to the closest highway. So it's really a part that has a lot of geographical challenges to crossing.
In some ways, borders are made to be crossed. That's the story every day in Big Bend National Park. Human smugglers help people cross illegally into the United States. The USA Today network talked face-to-face with a smuggler who says a border wall won't stop him, but it will make him more money.
No va a parar. Siempre vamos a ver personas que quieran pasar, que ellos lleguen y pues cada quien su objetivo, ¿verdad? Ellos lograr llegar a donde van y tratar de cumplir su objetivo y uno tratar de pasarlos para ganarse un peso. Yo nunca pensé en mi vida a lo mejor estar ni en este lugar ni de repente haciendo eso, ¿verdad? Yo vengo de una familia humilde y yo vine de Veracruz para acá con esa ilusión, como todos, de ir para el otro lado. Entonces de repente me deportaron, caí aquí, empecé a trabajar en la yarda, ganaba 30 pesos diarios ganaba. Me fui abriendo paso así, llegué a ese parque y empecé a limpiar vidrio, pero ahí una persona hubo que me dijo, ¿quieres torear? ¿Cuánto me vas a pagar? No, pues te voy a pagar $50. Y así empecé.
Where we're walking to is where my brother was walking through when they said he got left behind.
Across the southwestern desert, thousands of people try to walk into the United States. Every year, some of them die trying.
I'm trying to see if it's my brother. If it's my brother, we're trying to take him home.
Many of their bodies have yet to be identified. Many have yet to be found.
Cremate him, make him an altar at the house. Hopefully it's not him though. You don't just leave family behind.
Having a missing person on the border, you could wait years before finding out what really happened. Some folks might never find out. It's like living in a nightmare that never ends until you get the answers that you need.
This is where someone died. He took off his shoes, he took off his clothes, and probably just laid down and was like, this is where I'm gonna die. So sad. I just want to find my brother. That's all I want.
Endangered species know no country and no border. Some of them depend on the freedom to roam both sides. If a border wall sealed the entire line, one thing is clear: part of nature would not survive.
You know, you have this oak woodland coming up through the canyons. It cuts right across the border where many species of wildlife pass back and forth. If we're going to recover the population of jaguars in the United States, we're going to need these cross-border ranges, no doubt.
Ever since jaguars have been extirpated or left the United States, they have been sporadically trying to make their way back from Mexico. Then there's the idea of a wall. If there's any chance, and if the United States wants there to be any chance for jaguars to ever reestablish themselves naturally in the United States, then as resilient as a jaguar can be, it can't pass through a wall.
Where we're walking to is where my brother was walking through when they said he got left behind.
Across the southwestern desert, thousands of people. Endangered species know no country.
Oh, these are beautiful.
Mexico is the top supplier of fresh produce to the United States, sending nearly 16 billion pounds a year.
If you've ordered a salad in January, February, or March, and it has a tomato on it, chances are it's a Mexican tomato.
One way to pay for a border wall would be to tax Mexican imports.
About 80% of our production of tomatoes are exported to the United States and Canada. We are picking and packing tomatoes today. Today's Wednesday. They will be in LA on Saturday of this week.
We're going to build a wall, and Mexico is going to pay for the wall.
If you link building a wall to a tariff or import tax, consumers will pay. U.S. consumers will pay.
us, farming tomatoes, it's a way of living. We trust in the United States institutions. We trust that at the end, what is going to prevail is common sense.
At the border, there is always something. Where there's a border, in 2017, the USA Today network traveled every inch of the US-Mexico boundary. This is what we found. Almost 700 miles of the border is fenced. In the Rio Grande Valley, border crossers easily wade the river. Agents currently apprehend more people in this area than anywhere else. But the river makes endless twists and turns, and the land next to it is almost all privately owned. Huge challenges for construction of a border wall. Near Brownsville, Texas, the border fence comes to an end, miles before it reaches the ocean. Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora sit on opposite sides of the border. Every day, trucks carry produce from Mexico bound for stores in the United States. Fences inside the city stretch for miles in either direction. The Imperial Dunes near Yuma, Arizona, use a so-called floating fence that sits on top of the sand. Shifting winds would soon bury a fixed wall. San Diego is one of the most secure stretches of border with multiple layers of fence. Still, drug smugglers can sneak through the ports or use boats or even tunnel underneath the border. Where there's a border, there's tension. There's a reason to cross. There's a reason to clamp down. And so, all along the US-Mexico border, there are places and people caught between those two forces. They have a foot in both worlds, and sometimes they're stuck in the middle. South Texas, a land of families from both sides of the border. The US began a border fence here, and many here faced a choice: lose their land or fight to keep it.
If they decide that they're going to take it, and they could, it doesn't matter that it's family heritage or storage site, or none of that matters to them.
If the country builds more fence or a new border wall, thousands more could be faced with the same decision.
Said, whoa, hold on. I don't want to sell my property. I feel that it's mine. Why should I just sign a paper out to you and say, because you're the government? What are we? We are human beings. We are here, we pay our property taxes. Doesn't that mean anything to anybody?
Communities tucked inside the twists and turns of the river could find themselves cut off.
If you really sit down and see the way the wall is going to be built in our little community here, we're going to be like in a prison type of a thing.
Effectively trapped on the outside of a border wall. Mount Cristo Rey rises above El Paso and Juarez. Its summit actually sits in neighboring New Mexico. From the religious statue at the top, pilgrims who climb this mountain every year can look down and contemplate their one international community. But they can also see the border fence at the foot of the mountain, marking a hard line between two worlds. Towering over the border, Mount Cristo Rey. It stretches into Texas and Mexico. At the top, a religious shrine calls to the faithful and looks out over one community. Reporter Eileen Flores knows her community well.
The actual mountain, it's in New Mexico, but it is right next to Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. And on top of it, you see the statue of a Christ looking into El Paso. So here in El Paso, can be standing in El Paso, but you can look into Juarez and you can look into New Mexico. We already have a fence, but that fence stops at the base of Mount Cristo Rey. So there's no physical barrier between the US and Mexico down at the bottom of the mountain. In El Paso, there's a lot of families who have relatives in Juarez, or you have the people who grew up in Juarez but now live in El Paso. So you have, families who bring their friend or their cousin or their daughter or their parents from Juarez, and together they go and climb the mountain. Usually when we heard about the border, they generalize the border as if it was one place. And what happens in one part of the border is what is happening throughout the border. And I don't see it that way. El Paso, it's a very unique community in the sense that we see Ciudad Juarez as part of El Paso. We are connected. And although we already have a fence, to have this wall, which we don't even know how it's going to look, to be put between the two communities, it will create this sense of division between the two communities that, have been together forever. We depend from one another to be successful. And I think that's what this fence, right there at the bottom of Mount Cristo Rey, it will be just this symbol of separation between the two communities.
Migrants from Mexico and Central America face danger and hardship to get this far.
No creo, por muy alto que lo haga o que cubra toda la frontera, creo que jamás nos va a detener.
They know they may not make it across the border. In spite of the law and the risks, they're willing to keep trying.
Nada nos va a poder detener de ese sueño. Pues. Bueno, pues yo fui reclutado, como dice mi amigo, por la Mara. Bueno, pues a mí y mi familia la amenazaron. Reclutar es cuando sin preguntar a cada persona tienes que trabajar aquí. Y si se opone, lo matas. Así trabajan las pandillas en Honduras. Aquí llevo como unos 13, 14 días. Quedamos donde nos agarra la noche, ahí nuestra cama, ahí nos acomodamos y ahí dormimos. Más que todo no le tiene miedo a los muertos, ni personas sombras que mires o espantos. No es como te digo, alguien que tal vez le caigan mal y te vaya a querer quitar la vida. Estresados, pues pensando a qué hora va a llegar el momento, la hora en que tenemos que cruzar para el otro lado.
On Arizona's border and elsewhere, Native American tribes have sovereign land in the United States and tribal homes in Mexico. A border fence changes the way they feel about their homes. For some, a wall would cut them off completely.
In our way of life, we were never put here to be in one place. We're nomadic. We travel from place to place, wherever the water is, wherever there's good growing, wherever the animals go. The creation of a wall, the creation of a barrier will impede the flow of life. One thing it will not stop is our prayer. As an elder said, we didn't cross the border crossed us. This is the international boundary of the United States and Mexico. This part of the U.S. border is 62 miles of the Tohono Nation. The only people that can cross this are Tohono Nation members. A wall, a fortified wall, would stop many of our members from crossing there. Could we go around the port of entries? Sure we could, but we will not. This is our land to care for. This is our traditional trails. We must keep this traditional passing. We must keep the prayer alive.
At the border, there is always something to be stopped. Crime, smuggling, all are intrusions on someone's life. But closing off a border is a never-ending task. In remote New Mexico, agents might track a border crosser for hours or even days before making an arrest. But here and all along the border, agents can still be in harm's way.
Yeah. Whenever you strap on a badge and gun to go to work every day, it's dangerous. There's risks involved.
Anytime you're working out here, especially at night, by yourself, tracking a group of people, there's always going to be a danger. The desert is unforgiving. And when you look around, there's nothing around you. What's hidden in the beauty is the danger. The terrain doesn't care who you are. The terrain just simply says, look, this is me, and if you don't like it, well, you're going to get hurt. Because you are so remote, and you are your own first responder, help may come. But depending on what the injury is, will it come in time?
We are the front line of America's security. Today, more than ever before, we know there are people that go to bed and wake up wanting to do harm to our country.
Borderland ranchers have confronted the atrocities of smuggling for years.
By God, there's a cow.
With drug running and shootouts on their land.
Well, there's probably no better way to grow up than growing up on a ranch. But growing up on the border, it was just interesting to never really see or hear or think of anybody being out there in that remote ranch. And then as I was getting older, realized there's 200-300 people a night going through there.
We think on our ranch there were 6 murders on the ranch itself.
Hey, come on, calf, come on. Hey.
Smugglers are not people you want to run into out in the middle of the ranch.
Yeah, there's definitely 2 sides to it. Working outside with my hands and actually producing something. The other side of that is the criminals coming through here and smuggling drugs and smuggling people.
That's what the whole border's about now, just money. This isn't a humanitarian deal anymore. You know, this is securing the border.
On the Arizona border, some people fear cartels can move freely. This group of heavily armed volunteers is out to take down the smugglers. Not everyone agrees with their vigilante tactics, but that hasn't stopped them yet.
People call us vigilante. I says, you know, take the word and break it in half. We've got a vigil that we're doing here on the border, and Annie is Annie up, do your part. When I was a kid, this one quote that Kennedy had has always stuck with me, and that is, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The more brutal the terrain, the more the drug runners love it, because the less roads means less access means less border patrol means easier time getting through. The 3 games. And all the games are the cartel's games. We're just trying to play with them. First you have a game of hide and seek. Game number 2 turns into a chess match. Then we end up playing the game of whack-a-mole. Team 2, Charlie. A lot of people think I'm crazy for doing it, but I'd always be sitting there going, what's coming through today? What didn't I stop? What didn't I do?
Outside Tecate, California, the U.S. border cuts a straight, imaginary line across steep mountainsides. It's marked by a mixture of fencing, some tall steel posts to stop crossers, some vehicle barriers. In some stretches, there's no fence at all. The Jacumba Wilderness area nearby is one of the deadliest spots for those who try to cross the border. Near Tecate, California faces Mexico across steep, rocky hillsides. Steel border fence already marks much of the line here. Reporter Dennis Wagner saw it from the air, Laura Gomez from the ground.
Going into California from Arizona, I remember when we were getting closer to the San Diego area, and you're going a little bit higher in elevation, and you can feel that the weather starts to get a little bit cooler. It's very pretty and kind of very serene. There's a winery that we drove by, and you see all the little vineyards and the little trees lined up on the side of a hill, and then there's the fence right there. Sometimes if you were driving along the border, you knew where the fence was. You knew where you would expect to see it. And in this moment, specifically near the Jacumba area in California, it kind of caught me by surprise to just be in this very, very, very beautiful place, and then you see again the fence there present, reminding you, you're right by the border. This is where you are.
When we're flying into San Diego, and as we're getting into San Ysidro, I started thinking again about what was the most dramatic thing that I experienced on this trip. And it's not really a question in a way, because it's not what I saw, it's what we didn't see. We flew almost 2 weeks, 2,000 some miles along the U.S.-Mexico border, and we did not see a single person hopping the fence.
San Diego is one of the most secured stretches of border with multiple layers of fence. Still, drug smugglers can sneak through the ports or use boats or even tunnel underneath.
Some of these smuggling organizations have been in business 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The amount of money is just too huge.
All right, I'm about ready to descend into the Galvez Tunnel. Tell me when you're clear.
With the advent of the infrastructure between the ports of entry, one of the unintended consequences was the huge narcotics tunnels that then were created.
We're at the San Ysidro Port of Entry. We're the busiest land border in the world. We lead the nation as far as smuggling attempts for aliens and narcotics. So our job is to ferret those people out, find them.
One of the other dynamics that we have faced is the marine smuggling threat.
It's a lot of ocean to cover.
Every time we've done something to try and secure the border, drug smuggling organizations have tried to come up with some way to end run us.